Hello guys, and today we're going to be doing another video in the weird and rare ammo saga with another 5 additions. This is the third video in the series if you're new here, but you don't need to have watched the other 2 for this one to make sense because each ammo is its own little story really. But if you do like this one, you could always watch the other 2 afterwards, eh? Also, the third entry on this list is honestly the weirdest thing I've encountered so far while doing these videos. And honestly, it's more of a story than an ammo type. But anyway, don't forget to smash that like button and we'll get into the video. So the first vehicle we need to talk about is completely unique. It's one of a kind, and the name, well, Leichter Panzerspähwagen mit schwerer Panzerbüchse 41, Sonderkraftfahrzeug 221. Oh, the Germans really know how to do it, don't they? And if you are German, you can let me know how I did with the pronunciation there. Because obviously, in Germany, being precise is better than being concise. So you might look at the ammo and deem it to just be normal APCR, right? Because that's how it appears in game. So isn't it just APCR? I mean, well, yes, but it's not very rigid. The name of the ammo gives it away. 2.8/2 centimeter. This is a squeeze bore. Those of you familiar with how APDS or Sabo rounds more generally work will see the resemblance here on screen now. And it has a similar idea. You use a large cannon to fire a smaller projectile, accelerating it to higher speeds for better armor penetration. In this case, 2.8 centimeters down to 2 centimeters. The difference with squeeze bores when comparing them to discarding Sabo is that the flanges are not discarded. The bore of the barrel narrows to squeeze them flat. Then the squeezed projectile exits the barrel intact and nothing is discarded. So it is kind of a different way of doing the same thing that a discarding Sabo round would do. Germany did experiment with these particularly earlier in the war, but as the war advanced, the tungsten used in the penetrating cores of these types of ammo became rarer and more scarce, and their production was almost entirely stopped by the end of 1944. This is actually what gave birth to ever more desperate projects like the APHEDS from my previous video. They just used smaller APHE shells instead of the tungsten carbide penetrators because, well, they didn't have any tungsten. Next, we have HEDP, High Explosive Dual Purpose, which is found on a few helicopters and actually at least one tank. But it's most widely found on US helicopters, so that's what we're mainly going to be talking about here. Basically, what you have is a heat grenade surrounded by a fragmentation jacket. This allows it to have good penetration against lightly armored targets, but it's also useful for anti-personnel as well, hence dual purpose. And in my opinion, the best way to use it in War Thunder is being shown here on screen. Well, I mean, I say best, but honestly it's a bit of a meme. So we're using the Squadron YAR-64 here, and we're overflying the battlefield at a couple of kilometers at the start of the game, and then just raining down 40mm grenades onto the tops of tanks. Obviously, the tops of tanks tend to not have very much or any armor at all, so even the small amount of penetration that you get can make a difference here. They're quite inaccurate, as all grenade launchers tend to be, but there isn't SPAA up usually at the start of the game, so you can, if you're lucky, get a couple of kills in like I have here. And honestly, it's quite a lot of fun. It's ineffective. You're usually just gonna get murdered before you get anywhere near the battlefield, right? Especially when people are first spawning SPAAs, which happens more often now. But, you know, you could have a laugh every now and then, and Like, I think I'll be doing this every so often just to break up the monotony of the grind, right? Like, I have the clickbait, I have like a little lineup going for it, you know, grinding top tier US. But, you know, if you take out the helicopter with nothing but the cannon, you know, you usually have enough spawn points to spawn in a tank as well afterwards. So, you know, have a bit of fun. And the next ammo type on our list, though, the third entry that I was talking about at the start, had me going around in circles for a little while. So I thought I would turn this into a bit of a story for you guys. So the ammo type in question that I was going to talk about is API-C, or Cermet Core. So, you know, I thought I'll explain what Cermet is, and I'll talk a bit about the 15mm MG151 and the Dushka, because both of those use it in-game, right? So I thought, yeah, hey, okay, I'll do a little bit of reading, I'll find out a bit about the ammo types and some context and talk about their game use, right, like I usually do. So, I decided to open up Ammunition Regulations for Aircraft Weapons, Part 10, Handbook of Ammunition for Aircraft Firearms, June 1942 edition. As any self-respecting War Thunder player would have that, you know, just on their bookshelf like I do, right? So I open it up and I find the section on the MG151 and I find the specific shell or round, whichever you want to use in this context, Spezialstahlkern, or in English, Special Steel Core, meaning a hardened steel alloy, which is not Cermet. So I can say straight away, yeah, that it's not Cermet, and the ammo is incorrectly labeled in game. So we still have example 2, right? Most Soviet tanks with a roof-mounted MG also have Cermet Core ammo in their belts. I'll just use footage of the IS-2. I enjoy playing World War II tanks. I'll roll out the IS-2 and get some footage, right? Wrong. So if we bring up the IS-2 and we check in English, it says API bracket C as usual. But if we change the language to Russian, we get the exact round designation, BS-41. So I think, great, okay, I'll read a bit about the BS-41 round and then I can put some backstory into the video, right? No, it's bad news, guys. While this does use a Cermet core, which is, in this context, tungsten carbide mixed with cobalt to form a shatter-resistant, armor-piercing core, which is kind of the point, right? To increase penetration. The bad news is that it was only produced in very small amounts in 1941, and it was only ever issued for the terrible 12.7mm anti-tank rifle, the Peter-er-Schar. This being just a straight-up copy of the German Tankgewehr from 1918. And as it was said, this rifle, they only used it in the opening stages of what the Russians call the Great Patriotic War because, well, it was really, really bad. So they stopped producing the ammo for it and moved on to, you know, the PTRS and other more well-known anti-tank rifles. So it's almost impossible that any IS-2 crew would ever have access to this round, and it was certainly never standard issue. And something else that's funny, it's the same for every 12.7mm roof-mounted MG that I checked, including the T80 BVM. Uh-oh. So anyway, next we have the 60mm Mortar found on the Merkava. Now, on these lists we've had spigot mortars, we've had rocket-assisted mortars, but how about just a regular old generic tube mortar? I mean, hey, one of these videos wouldn't be complete without some kind of mortar, right? Now, in-game, all Merkavas Mark II and onwards have this, but it only fires smokes and it only fires them at short range. You'll notice when you fire a smoke in the Merkava, one is yeeted out overhead. This is actually fired from a mortar inside the tank that just sticks out of the roof a little bit. In real life though, this isn't just like a smoke launcher or something. This is an actual legit 60mm mortar that can be fired from inside the tank. It can fire a whole mix of shell types, including smoke, illumination rounds, and even fragmentation grenades. Now, I couldn't find any real sources as to why the Israelis did this. I mean, we know they like firepower because every Israeli tank is absolutely coated in machine guns. But I decided to posit the question to ChatGPT to see if they had any useful input. And their suggestion was that it was for engaging in close-range targets without needing external infantry support and for urban warfare. But this, to me, seems unlikely, right? Note the, as mentioned, many machine guns all over the tank, right? You know, it would make more sense to me personally that those would be used for, you know, anti-personnel purposes, right? Like, if I had to make an educated guess, personally, I'd say the utility of lobbing smokes and illumination shells seems much more plausible. But the mortar does have a range of, apparently, 2.7 kilometers, which is pretty good. But if anybody does know better or has any, like, actual reputable source, or even better, if you have first-hand experience, let us know in the comments, because I'm kind of interested now, honestly. Although, as an addendum, I will add that having those illumination shells for War Thunder could be quite fun and memey, especially in night battles. So I hope they do add those in the future, because I would like to mess about with them. And last but not least, we have the humble practice round. Now, there are many aircraft that used to have practice rounds in their belts, especially like a few years ago when I started playing, but that's been steadily reducing over time. These days, it's pretty much just the Japanese, and even then on certain cannons like the Ho-5, as found on the Key 43, which I'm using in the footage here. I did also see that the French NC223.3 also has a practice tracer shell in its default belt. And I'm sure that there are more practice shells lurking out there somewhere. But what are they and why are they in the game? Well, all militaries for as long as there have been guns have had practice ammunition of some description, right? Whether that's rubber bullets, wooden bullets, or even just super cheap ammo for target practice, they all kind of serve a similar purpose, right? To get you used to using the weapon that the ammo is for. Whether that's, you know, going around an assault course and firing rubber bullets at people, or whether it's more like very cheap metal rounds for cannons to get you used to the recoil and things like that. Well, it depends a lot, right? In game, they're basically just bad armor-piercing shells. Usually, AP shells are made so that they're actually, you know, good at penetrating armor. Practice rounds are basically just that, right? A lump of metal made very cheaply to give to new pilots so they can get a feel for the cannons and maybe a bit of target practice, right? I'm being super general here because it varies from nation to nation and the time period, but this is basically how they function in game. It's a tracer round without the tracer, which sort of leads on to the mystery of that French practice tracer, because yeah, I mean, I thought a practice round was just a tracer without the tracer, but now I'm not even that sure. In reality, I couldn't find any evidence of nations using practice rounds routinely in frontline service. But as always, if you know more, let us know in the comments. I'm sure that there are some very desperate situations where it may have happened, especially in like late war Germany or late war Japan maybe. That's what would first come to mind for me. And this is also perhaps why over time these have been renamed to either like AP or tracer shells. Like the British ones have been renamed to tracer shells now, so yeah, thank you for coming, guys. That's going to be all for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to go and watch the first two parts because they're going to be very similar, right? And, you know, hey, maybe even throw us a subscribe if you're one of the very few people still watching all the way to the end. So thank you, guys, and goodbye.